Let's call this meeting back to order. So I just want to, give folks an update.
Well, don't we have to call the meeting back?
You just did. I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
All right. Your attention, please. So earlier this month, the developer, Deepwater Wind's CEO Jeff Grabowski reached out to me. He expressed interest in sitting down. So I set up a meeting with myself, their CEO, our interim town manager, and both of our attorneys were present. And I would say it was a productive conversation. We expressed what our top concerns were with the project. The things that, these are really the things that we've been talking about all along, ensuring public health during and after the construction process. And I'll say that again, because I think that's this board's number one concern and our responsibility, ensuring public health before and after and during the construction process. Also removing from the project the 54-acre field south of Hoskins Road that's most visible to cars and neighbors. Additional points of concern that we discussed include providing appropriate screening that fits with the natural landscape, developing and funding a comprehensive decommissioning plan that ensures that the property can return to farmland upon the conclusion of the project, preservation of historic barns on the property, and the option for the town to obtain the development rights for the property after the project is decommissioned. So we discussed all these points with Deepwater Wind, which they heard and acknowledged. And it was a good conversation, and the developer expressed a willingness to work with the town to address these issues. It's also important to acknowledge some of the things that Deepwater Wind has already agreed to, including, but not, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but testing of abutters' wells before and after construction, walking paths around portions of the property, and also having portion of the fencing raised for small mammals to be able to get underneath. I appreciate the developer's willingness to sit down with the town and talk, and I expect that more conversation is going to take place in the weeks to come. So we have until February 5th to file an appeal, and it's more than likely that we're going to need more time than that in order to come to an agreement because of the complexity of these issues. Which is why I would advocate that we continue these conversations that we've started, but we also file an appeal so that we don't lose that right. So that said, is there a motion to instruct our attorney to appeal the Connecticut Siting Council's decision on the Tobacco Valley Solar Project?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Also, is there a motion to instruct our attorney to take any related action, including but not limited to filing a motion to stay?
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Also, is there a motion to instruct our interim town manager to recommend funding sources for a supplemental appropriation to fund an appeal in an initial estimate of $100,000?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just a quick one on that we certainly have the funds, either potentially within current budget or obviously fund balance. So we're going to explore, I think, where that makes the most sense to get those funds. But again, $100,000 might sound like a large number for some folks, but it's certainly well within the realm of what it should be for this type of appeal. And again, we're prepared to see that all the way through. So.
And it's a small price to pay to ensure public safety.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn this public meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. So we're going to take 5 minutes and then resume with the regular Board of Selectmen meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to add an agenda item under other business to have a discussion about the planning of Simsbury's 350th celebration?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll add that agenda item. Time now for public audience. So anybody who wishes to speak can speak for 5 minutes, and anyone who needs additional time beyond that, I'm more than happy to stay after this meeting to chat. Joan.
Joan Code 26 Whitcomb Drive. Are reviewing the Simsbury Performing Arts Center's SPAC contract with the town to defend my complaint against Dave Ryan, president of the SPAC, that the SPAC is a public agency. There are 4 criteria that I had to prove. 1, whether the entity performs governmental functions. 2, the level of government funding. 3, the extent of government involvement or regulation. And 4, whether the entity was created by government. After hearing with the Freedom of Information hearing officer and the full commission, the FOI commission concluded that the SPAC was created by government and received some government funding. The commission also concluded that the SPAC does not perform a governmental function and is not significantly regulated by government. According to the contract between the town and the SPAC, there are many areas that give the town and the Board of Selectmen oversight over the management. The town has elected to have no oversight over the SPAC by creating a document that is a paper tiger. The contract states the town gives the SPAC the use of the land, garage, and office rent-free on Iron Horse Boulevard. The SPAC has the use of the area for entertainment from March 1st to November 1st. The use of the office and garage is rent-free for 12 months. Why should residents and businesses have to endure challenges to parking and traffic, along with tailgating, hot smoking, and noise pollution during concerts without any revenues derived from the SPAC's entertainment venue? The SPAC is required to give the town a mission statement to be approved and reviewed by the Board of Selectmen. Has the Board of Selectmen reviewed and approved the mission statement? Has the SPAC directly contributed to any charities required by the 501c3? The SPAC uses the Recreation Department staff during working hours and beyond to maintain and repair the SPAC's equipment at a nominal fee. Why has the town allowed the SPAC to enjoy benefits that any other private organization or taxpayers cannot derive from this government? Since the town appoints members of the SPAC board, why hasn't the town asked to review the minutes of the meetings? The SPAC is required to provide an audit report to the town that is given to the finance director. Has anyone reviewed this document for accuracy? The town has the ability to question whether the SPAC is providing events to the public at a reasonable cost. Has the cost structure for events been reviewed? Why is town attorneys Bob DiCrescenzo the agent for SPAC when they are a private organization? During the proceedings at the hearing before the FOI commission, they were puzzled that the contract between the SPAC and the town, with all the oversight given to them through the contract, were never implemented or questioned by the town. If the town had assumed their oversight responsibilities and governed appropriately, the decision would have been reversed. The SPAC has hired a professional full-time paid manager who will assume the position held by Tom Vincent. The town and the Board of Selectmen have an opportunity to assume their responsibilities of oversight to make sure the residents and businesses are not impacted with the events. With a new manager of the SPAC and the retirement of Jerry Toner, Director of Culture, Parks, and Recreation Department, and the town should guide the transition for the benefit of the residents. As a result of the continual outbursts of the Director of Planning Community Development, Jamie Rabbit, I have filed a Freedom of Information request to assess all the electronic communications to and from private public equipment received and transmitted to and from Jamie Rabbit or family from his consulting employment at Sterling, Connecticut, Pomfret, Connecticut, and Lisbon, Connecticut, from November 23, 2015 to the present. Jamie Rabbit, as a condition of employment, advised the town and was given permission to continue his consulting with Sterling and Pomfret, provided that this does not conflict with his employment with the town. Jamie Rabbit was on staff of Lisbon, Connecticut. Lisbon, Connecticut was not included in the condition of employment, although he was noted on the Lisbon, Connecticut Plan of Development 2016. Simsbury is witnessing a significant change in management. The town will have a professional town manager. The chief of police is retiring. The finance director will be leaving, and the recreation director will be retiring. To lower costs, the town should review the redundancies between the recreation department and public works. Outsourcing the golf course would reduce expenditures. The finance director position and business manager of the Board of Education should be merged into one position with reduction of costs. All these challenges should be used to benefit the residents of Simsbury. All of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Patch, Twitter at Joan Co, newsfeed on Facebook, and Simsbury Forum Topics. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joan. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in public audience tonight? Okay, in that case, we will move on. We have one presentation tonight by Aquarian Water Company on the topic of water conservation.
Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Ulrich from Aquarian Water.
Thank you,
How you
John.
doing?
Appreciate it. Good to meet you.
And the reason I'm here to talk today is Aquarian has decided to move ahead with a water conservation program. And
Thank you, Jeff.
we will be rolling it out to Simsbury in 2019. You don't have to worry about this. In 2018, we wanted to give you guys a heads up as to what's going to happen. That's how it applies.
Light, a little lighter?
There we go.
So we just want to give you an update and prepare you for it. There'll be more communications as we go forward, but just to give you a sense of where we are and how we got here. I don't know if you can all see it.
That's
So-
fine, yep.
Okay, so it's a water conservation we're going to talk about. It's been a topic of conversation for a while, but really what pushed it, is to summer of 2016 or fall of 2016. This is our Bargh Reservoir, which is the largest reservoir that serves the town of Greenwich. And it, as you can see, that's really,
It's on, it's just for the TV
For the
audience.
TV.
that's not really the way you want a reservoir to look. You really want it to look more like it does on the left side. Now, the nice thing about a reservoir is there's pluses and minuses. It can scare the heck out of you when you see it look in this condition, but you also know you have to react to it. Up here in Simsbury, we deal more with groundwater, but we did have some water supply issues up here in the summer of 2016 in Simsbury as well. In fact, the water demands that summer got so high up here, I don't know if everybody was aware of it, we had sent out a code red phone call twice to the residents asking them to cut back on their demands because we were getting it to the point that we were getting concerned about whether we could maintain proper fire protection and service to the residents. The people were very responsive, and when the phone call went out, almost instantaneously, we could see our tanks going back up, but our tanks have been dropping multiple days in a row. To give you an idea, everybody still thinks this is a wet year, and it was a wet, but in reality, the 12 months, we are still well below normal rainfall for the year of 2017. And what this is a running bar. So the black line represents the 3-year average rainfall that we get in Connecticut. And then the green line over the last 110 years represents how much we've been above or below that rainfall in the previous 36 months. And what you can see is this area stands out. That's the 1960s, and that's the drought of record. Everything in our industry refers to the drought of record, the 1960s, and we refer to it as a 2 to 3 year drought. But if you look at it, it really lasted almost the whole decade of the 60s, where they were significantly below normal rainfall. What's shocking about this is now when you look where we are now, this is the biggest deficit of rainfall we've had in a 3-year period in the last 110 years, with the exception of the 60s drought. So we are in a record level drought, on the order of within the last 100 years. So in response to that, we have been having we decided to move forward a little faster with water conservation. We had already kind of started down this road for several reasons. Southwest Fairfield County, that's really 4 towns. It's Greenwich, Stamford, New Canaan, and Darien. We realized that we had a water supply deficit down there, and we were going to have to increase capacity down there. And as part of the permitting process, the approval process, we realized we were going to have to answer some questions about water conservation. So we knew we were going to have to go down this road. The other thing is, I don't know if everybody's aware of this, there's some new regulations coming out called the stream flow regulations. Actually, they've already been approved. And what they're going to require is every reservoir in New Jersey or in Connecticut, every reservoir in Connecticut is going to be required to release more water than they currently release. And the idea is to improve the water quality in the streams downstream of the reservoirs to improve the ecology. Sounds like a great concept, and we've been supportive of it. But what it does do is it releases the amount of water you have available in your reservoirs. It reduces your safe yield. So in over a 10-year period, the rules take 10 years to go into effect, we're going to lose on the order of 15 million gallons a day of available supply, which represents about 15% of our supply. So it's a big impact to us, and we're realizing that we've got to find ways to address that. You either do that by coming up with additional supplies or through water conservation. It's going to probably be somewhat of a balance, but it's not easy to build a reservoir in Connecticut anymore. So finding a new supply is not going to be that easy. So we knew water conservation is going to be an important part of it. So we had gone ahead. We worked with a woman named Amy Vickers. She's actually out of Massachusetts. She's a nationally recognized water conservation expert. She came in and did an analysis of our data, and what we found was the average water use in Connecticut is 83 gallons a day per person. That's GPCD is gallons per capita person per day. The average in the United States is 88. So actually Connecticut's water usage is slightly below the national average, which was surprising. I would have expected this to be on the high side. But what we also did find is the top 1% of our customers, or our high-end customers, use a lot of water. And the residents, they use, our 1% use 700 gallons a day per person. They're using 8 times the U.S. average, and that's every day of the year. It's really focused in on the summer months, but it's when you spread it out over the year, they're using a ton of water. But the other thing that's really surprising is how little water the bottom half of our customer use. Only 37 gallons per day per person per day, well below half of what the rest of the customers are using. So what did we find? We found that most of our customers are water efficient. When you look at that 50%, even up to 75% are pretty water efficient. But there are a small number of users in each customer class that are really creating the problem where we're seeing more and more water usage. Our demand's going up when they should be going down. And outdoor water use is really a big part of that. There's more and more irrigation systems going in, and people are spending more and more money on their landscaping and really putting a lot of money and water into it to irrigate it and keep it growing and satisfactory. So we really decided that our conservation efforts should be focused on those very high and high-end users. So we moved ahead in the 4 towns this past year in 2017 in Greenwich, Stamford, New Canaan, and Darien with 2-day-a-week restrictions. So the customers are now limited to only being able to water 2 days a week. It's Tuesdays or Saturdays and Tuesdays or Sundays and Wednesdays, depending on your address. And it applies only to automatic sprinklers, the buried sprinklers that are on a timer and controller, or if you put a sprinkler at the end of a hose. You can walk around and water by hand all you want. You can fill a pool, you can wash a car, you can do all those types of things. You can even use soaker hoses as much as you want. It's really just to deal with the spray irrigation. And we do have a variance process. So we do allow, if you have new planting, that you can get a 5-week exemption from the schedule in order to get your new landscaping established. And also if you have a large property, because we're working with irrigation contractors, some large properties it's very hard for them to irrigate within a 1-day period. So there is a variance process for them to get access to more days, but it requires them getting an inspection from an irrigation expert and making sure that their system is up to snuff, and then they have to commit to a 15% reduction from some previous numbers. So just to give you an idea, so how does Simsbury play into this? Simsbury is one of our higher use towns in the state. It's not as high as Greenwich and Stamford, but it's up in that ballpark. And a lot of it is related to the outdoor water use. And what this graph, there's a lot of information. I'll try to talk to it. Each bar, so this is all customers put together. This is our top 1% in Simsbury. This is the top 10%, top 25%, top 50, and the bottom 50%. The red represents how much of their water use is outdoor water use, and the blue represents how much of their water use is indoor water use. So you can see, when the top 1, top 10, and top 25% are using a substantial amount of water outside. And to give you an idea, so the top 1% of the customers in Simsbury are using 1,000 gallons a day, year-round, 365 days a year. So when you really work that out, it's probably closer to 2,000 gallons a day in the summertime, because they're really only lasting 6 months and they're spreading out that demand over the whole year. The other thing, this green bar represents what percent each category. So this is 100% of all customers. The top 1% are using 5% of the water, so they're using 5% of their population value. The top 10% are using 28% of the water in Simsbury. The top 25% are using half of the water. So 1/4 of the customers are using half of the water use in Simsbury. And when you get to the top 50%, they're using 74% of the water. Again, it's those low customers. The bottom 50% are really only using 26% of the water. So it's really a skewed use towards the customers, and a lot of it is really related to outdoor water use. And what we found in the 4 towns, you know, this is the way we're kind of approaching it, is it's really unfair for a small group of customers to cause an impact on everybody when the vast majority of the customers are getting by and aren't creating the problem, but it ends up applying to everybody. And on top of that, the new water plan that's out now has a lot of support for conservation, and they'd like to see statewide water conservation start to roll forward. So what did we find at the 2-day-a-week? So we've done 1 year down in those 4 towns. They're very affluent towns, and we were expecting a lot of pushback. It wasn't as difficult as we thought it was going to be. We obviously had some people who aren't happy with the program, but overall, the vast majority of people, I would say, when we've gone to presentations at library associations, men's clubs, retirement groups, 85–90% of the people, when you throw the data up and they see what the data is, they've been very supportive of it. In general, we've had about maybe 5 to 10 customers per town right now that are giving us a hard time about not wanting to comply. But we've had some really good lessons. What we found, like we said, is the outdoor irrigation provides the highest benefit. Irrigation is becoming pervasive. Basically, anytime a new house goes up or somebody upgrades their house, they put a new irrigation system in with landscaping, and we can see it on our tanks. They water Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starting May 1st or April 15th, and water all the way through the summer. And you really don't need, the grass will survive. In May and June, a lot of times you don't even need irrigation. You don't really need the irrigation until sometime in July or August. So those irrigation systems being on for all those months is really a lot of unnecessary water. It's the right thing to do from our perspective. It's a resource for everybody. It is, from our perspective, the most important part is provide for health and safety of the customers and fire protection. So to create any problems that impacts that for irrigation doesn't seem to make sense. Reduces the potential for future droughts. The less water you use for these situations, more water is going to be available, later in the year if you do have a dry year, and this is a dry year again, and we've had some very good results. We do realize customer education is required, so we'll be rolling out a program going forward. We're eventually going to go statewide with this. Right now, we're kind of going town by town. We did the first 4 towns this past year. Now this year, we're going to be adding Westport and Newtown, and then our plan is to bring it to Simsbury in 2019. Enforcement is required, so we do go around and make phone calls and send letters to the customers that are violating. We'll notify the town, so the town's aware of where we're having issues. And I would say, 90% of the people, once we contact them once, end up complying and agreeing with us, and if it doesn't turn into an issue. And then just giving it down in 2017, this past year in those 4 towns, we saved 860 million gallons of water from 2016 to 2017. It's almost 1 billion gallons of water savings. And if you look at that, that's essentially almost half a reservoir, the reservoirs we have down there. So essentially, we created, like we were talking before about trying to create a new water supply source, we created a new water supply source by just creating the savings. So it's had a real positive impact. Like I said, there's been a little negative feedback, but overall, I think most people have understood it. We've worked very well. I think a lot of time and effort with the irrigation contractors. They're on board with it. In the industry, the irrigation industry, they're starting to buy into this because they realize across the rest of the country, this is where things are going, and they're going to get themselves in trouble from a business perspective if they don't support water conservation. So what we're planning on doing in Simsbury is we do intend to implement the 2-day-a-week restrictions in 2019. We're not expecting the town to do anything or pass anything. We feel pretty comfortable in working with the 4 towns that through PURA and other state laws, we have the ability to enforce it. So we would be doing the enforcing and stuff like that, but we're hopeful that the town will be supportive of us and supportive if, things come into the town, or when we call you and ask you to follow up with a customer that has been, maybe not obeying, if you could follow up with them. We do get a lot of calls from neighbors turning in, and that's the one thing you have to deal with is there is some frustration that builds up when so-and-so, the one person on the street is watering 7 days a week and everybody else is trying to comply to the schedule. You do have to show that you are trying to act on that, or else you're gonna lose some credibility across the whole thing. So we plan on working with Simsbury to roll that out over the next year. And there'll be a big communications program where we'll be contacting the residents, sending a card like this to let them know the schedule, having some public meetings, meeting with the local businesses, probably having like a town hall meeting with local contractors, things like that, to get everybody on board with what's coming and why and what the benefits of it will be. I think that's it. So,
Well, thank you very much.
any
Just,
questions for me?
yeah, Chris.
Hey, Jeff, the water savings that you showed us for the communities, do you have a sense of roughly what percent of usage that
Yeah,
was?
so we saved 21% between 2016. So it's interesting from May 1st to the end of October, we had exactly the same rainfall in 2016 as 2017. A little different. The rainfall came late, earlier in the season this year, and came later in the season in 2016. But if you look at it, it's exactly the same rainfall, 4 inches below normal. And we ended up reducing water usage about 21% in the 4 towns between the 2 years. We're going to assume, because we have some other towns to look at that have similar water use, we're assuming about 10 to 11. Half of that is related to 2 days a week, and half of it's related to the kind of the way the water, the rainfall pattern, as opposed. So it's probably on the order of 10% that we think we can get as a savings off of the 2-day-a-week restrictions in a town like Simsbury. We're not going to get 10% in a town that doesn't have as big an irrigation demand. A town like Bridgeport wouldn't have that kind of savings, but the higher irrigation towns are we would expect close to 10% savings.
And just,
Yeah,
oh, can I just ask one other
Yeah,
question?
go ahead.
I mean, you mentioned that there's some pressure being put on the irrigation companies. Are there some changes to design of irrigation systems that are emerging for water conservation?
So there's a lot of new heads and styles. There's a lot of industry knowledge on the zones and how they're set up and stuff like that. And now there's controllers that can work with local weather stations. And if it looks like it's going to rain tomorrow, it'll make an adjustment to how much water it's going to irrigate today. If it rained 2 days ago, it'll make an adjustment there. So there are some controllers that have a lot of capabilities. So we're in the process. There's a third variant that we're proposing, or that we're going to be rolling out this year, that works with the irrigation contractors. That says if the customer puts in a high efficiency controller and has a high efficiency system, they can get an exemption that allows them to go outside the schedule as long as they commit to a 20% reduction in the water use. So the goal is to get, if they're willing to give us a water reduction, but they want to be able to water on their own schedule, that's fine. But give us more than we would have gotten if you had stayed on the 2-day-a-week.
Can I just,
I'm sorry. So the irrigation contractors, they've been very supportive of it, much more supportive than I've expected them to be, because I think in the industry they're kind of recognizing this is where things are going.
we have had some conversations about this. Have you noticed any difference in the water usage and enforcement in a town that has an ordinance like Greenwich and towns that do not?
I would say one thing is Greenwich has, with their ordinance,
Yeah.
they could also
Go after wells.
go after wells as well. So even though we can only enforce customers that are on our system, Greenwich is also enforcing, 2 days a week, on well owners.
It's very helpful for us if the town has, like in Greenwich, we're all on the same page and we interact with Greenwich quite a bit. So it is helpful for them to have the same ordinance. And then there's the benefit of the fact that they can also enforce it on people with wells. And because what will happen, and this has happened a couple times, people will decide they don't want to comply with our schedule and they'll decide they want to drill a well just so they can irrigate on their own schedule. And so that it kind of limits that from happening. So, because that's really not the goal is not to push people off of our system to push them onto
Right.
onto the groundwater system to irrigate. So.
Do you have any way to measure groundwater levels with
We
regard
have
to
we
wells?
have our
or-
own measurements of our wells in the area and stuff like that. So we have a sense of where things are. But groundwater, it's tough because it's such a takes a long time to see some impact sometimes.
Because that's
So-
where the wells
Yeah,
are drawing from. During a prolonged drought, I
Yep.
know we've had some wells go dry,
Yep.
and I'm just wondering if you've noticed any, is that happening less than,
We have not lost any wells, but our water levels are lower than they historically been. 2016, they were worse than this year, but they're still below where they normally would be at this time of year. So,
so the towns that do not have ordinances,
yep.
how do you handle that enforcement?
Generally, the town they kind of take a hands-off approach. They kind of leave it to us to do it. They will make phone calls for us or contact residents that are not complying and ask them. They basically contact them and say, look, we're supportive of what Aquarian's trying to do with the water restrictions. We're asking that you comply as well, because we are hearing it from your neighbors and things like that. But just so that they know that it's not just us who is trying to work with them.
But your only remedy is to stop service, right? I mean, you really,
Yeah,
That's-
right now, our only remedy is to stop service. We haven't stopped service on anybody. We really don't want to stop service with anybody.
I'm sure,
Because
yeah.
it complicates things. We are looking at some other options. If we, in the next rate case, we might go for a fining system or something like that. But we worked with the city of Dallas, Texas. They've done 2-day-a-week restrictions about 5 or 6 years ago and had very good results. And the funny thing is, look at their rainfall and their heat. And they basically came up and said, when they met us and saw our data, like, if we can do 2 days a week in Dallas, Texas, you guys should be able to do that 2 days a week in Connecticut. And what they found is fining was not very effective because generally the people you have the most trouble with are the more affluent people, and the fine doesn't affect them. Well, we've got some pretty affluent customers in some of the towns. I mean, some people don't really worry about a water bill.
So from a perspective of conservation, we've discussed things such as dripping faucets and glasses of water in restaurants. I mean, does that kind of restriction move the needle?
Yeah, they definitely have benefits. Indoor water use is definitely. We are right now asking for a 10% reduction of our customers because of how low the rainfall has been. So there's a benefit there, but from our perspective, the biggest bang for the buck is on irrigation. That's where the biggest bang for a buck. And what will probably happen is we roll this out to the state over the next 3, 4, 5 years. When we get that rolled out to the state, then we'll start concentrating on the other high potential. And toilets are a big potential, converting toilets over. There's still a lot of 5-gallon toilets out there, and now you can get down to 1.25 gallon toilets. And if someone flushes their toilet 5 times a day, that's a lot of use. The other ones are, there's still shower heads out there. There's still faucet aerators out there. So there's still a lot of potential in interior as well. But right now, we think this has the most potential for the return on investment. And then as we move forward, we will start looking at internal as well.
I put an irrigation system in my house this year.
You're in that 1% group.
Well, 6 of us in the house. It's probably the biggest point of contention between my wife and I this past year was putting that irrigation system in. So the fact that the one meeting she shows up to attend is tonight, you could have made a timed a worse presentation. But curious of the so a town like Simsbury, which has a very which is pretty fascinating, a fantastic public recreation complex like Simsbury Farms. It has a public golf course, which draws water from a pond, which draws water from its own well. I know that. In situations like that, do you work with towns to make suggestions to them to say facilities like that you need to also be participants along with the residents as well to put into plans?
We have made that for a portion of our water. We don't have any control over wells.
Certainly.
If they're filling the pond with Aquarion water, then we have been asking them to reduce their usage by 10%. Because if you look at the golf courses, they have the most efficient systems out there, best technology. So, to ask them to reduce by 10% was reasonable. They all agreed. We provided them on a monthly basis with their numbers so they could see how they're doing. And they all worked very hard to reduce their use.
And then from a town perspective, we'd be willing to work with the town. And we have an irrigation, we have a nationally recognized irrigation expert that we've been working with, and we could make arrangements for him.
That's what I'm thinking. That's, I mean,
and
if we're
make
asking
recommendations.
our citizens to make essentially a sacrifice,
Yep.
then we should also be looking to work with and implement plans that are conservation based for our town assets as well.
All the towns that have been included in twice weekly watering, they follow that for all their sports fields. They only water
Yeah.
twice a week. So, you know, they were doing the same thing.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on now to Selectmen actions. Item A is the approval of tax refunds. Is there a motion to approve tax refunds in the amount of $41,803.27?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion passes. Item B is the approval of the application and acceptance.
Eric, hold on one second. Yeah. We got to get that mic put up here.
Oh, okay. We need the mic back. Okay. Item B is related to the library. So the library is interested in applying for a $1,000 revisiting the founding era grant. And Susan is here to give us a little more information on that. Would you mind stepping up to the podium and just giving a little context on that?
I'm here today to ask for approval to apply for and receive the Visiting Founding Era Grant. It is a project of the American Library Association and the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History, which is also supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities. The primary goal of our grant project is to encourage an appreciation of the founding era through community conversations based on historical documents and themes of enduring importance. We'll be doing it through an intergenerational, so we'll be getting the teens involved, we'll be getting the schools involved, members of, since Simsbury is such a historic place, Connecticut is one of the American Revolution, that we would encourage conversations and panel discussions on that. We would be engaging residents in community conversations, both contemporary and historical. Community conversations would be facilitated by the library. And past panel facilitation conversations that we've had have been very well received by members of Simsbury. Finally, the library's current plan of service includes an emphasis on intergenerational programming, and we feel that this grant would provide an opportunity for the library to expand critical programming as outlined in our strategic plan and plan of service. We're hoping that if we do get the grant, it will provide access to support materials, resources, and we'd be able to get specialists to come to Simsbury and talk on history. Right now, we're in the process of writing the grant, and we hope to have it completed before the January 31st submission deadline and have it before the board on the 22nd of January. If we do get the grant, we would hope to start programming between December of 2018 through March of 2019.
Any questions for Susan? All right, thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the application of a $1,000 revisiting the founding era grant and acceptance of this grant if it's awarded?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that motion passes. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Next is Friends of Simsbury Farms and the Simsbury Farms Men's Golf Club have expressed interest in making donations to a couple of projects at the Simsbury Farms Golf Course. Mark Deming is here. He's with the Friends of Simsbury Farms, and hoping you can just give us a little more context on these two projects.
Brian Circle, I'm president of the Friends of Simsbury Farms, and we have two items tonight. We will be making a donation for the acquisition of a solar-powered aerator for the pond just below the 15th tee, which will do a couple things. It will aerate the water. It will clean the water, hopefully, of algae, beautify the pond, and the reason we went with solar in this case is because it did not require extensive running electrical cable to some place in the middle of the course. This will pay for the rack, the panels, and the battery assembly. That needs about, I think it's 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day to recharge in order to run it. It'll be a floating aerator in the pond. So the Friends of Simsbury Farms, we're contributing $3,750 maximum, and the Simsbury Men's Club is contributing the other half, for a total of approximately $7,500 in acquisition and installation costs. Secondly, I'm thankful for the Aquarium Company to allow me to segue into the second thing that the Friends of Simsbury Farms will be paying for in total, up to a maximum of $5,000, is a new weather monitoring system that ties into the irrigation system at the farms. This would allow to tie into the computer system that would improve the control of the sprinkler heads, when they go off, how often they go off, depending on the weather, how much moisture is in the soil, and the like. It also will reduce the number of labor hours involved in that. Much of this will now happen on an automatic basis as opposed to people going out and turning on and turning off. And that will save money, and it also has to do with the timing of the sprinkler heads. So once that gets installed, tied into the computer system, hopefully that'll be this spring, we will be hopefully saving more water and watering when necessary, and also saving on labor costs.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Is there a motion to accept with thanks a total of $12,500 in donations from the Friends of Simsbury Farms and the Simsbury Men's Club toward the two projects just described?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, and that motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item D is, relates to the council that's been working with us associated with the property at 200 Hot Meadow Street. Jamie, I was hoping you could give us a little more information on this item.
For members of the Selectmen who may not be aware that our work with the Silverman Group on 200 Hot Meadow, we have been using attorney Mike Ziska, was with the firm of Murtha Kalina. Mike was utilized as one of the leading land use attorneys to come on board because existing town council had a conflict. Mike has recently moved from Murtha Kalina to Halloran and Sage to join their land use department. And we're making a request that we can continue to utilize Mike Ziska on matters associated with 200 Hot Meadow. Both the Land Use and Planning Department as well as the WPCA has utilized Mike's services.
And his rate would be unchanged, right?
The rate would not change.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Jamie. Can I have a motion to authorize the use of Halloran and Sage to provide legal services to the town of Simsbury on matters associated with 200 Hot Meadow Street?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion passes. Item E is the Homeland Security Grant application. Each year, the federal government provides funds for training and other operations related to Homeland Security. Kevin Kowalski is here. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, it's an annual event. And basically, all it is a pass-through. We act as a pass-through the town does to give the funds back to Capital Region Council of Governments to operate training and services and supplies.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to empower Acting Town Manager Sean Kimball to sign a memorandum of agreement regarding the use of federal Homeland Security grant funds to support regional set-aside projects and accept those funds if they're awarded?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, the documents refer to, one refers to Sean and one refers to Maria. Did you do that on purpose, or?
Maybe I could amend the motion for just to make it about the town manager.
Be extra careful here, just to make sure both the town managers, if you will, because there may be follow-up documents, she'll have to actually sign it.
Yeah, we're on a time schedule, that's the problem, that we may miss. But actually, in the future, she'll be
Right.
signing all the documents after that. So if you can enable her to do that, that would be extremely helpful.
Maybe in the wording of the motion, we could just make it the town manager and not name that person, so.
Well, the date for Maria is the date of her swearing in, so that would be Monday.
Yeah, we also have some reimbursement forms that'll have to be done in the next several months. That,
So you'll want her on that.
yeah, she'll be having to sign. Once she signs it and she maintains her employment, it's good forever while she's
Okay.
doing it. So that makes it a little bit easier.
I just didn't want to cause trouble by having two different,
And I mean, it's up to you. If you want to, we can come back and
no, we might
ask
as
for the
well,
same thing.
we should approve it, but just wanted to be aware.
More importantly, are we making Chris read this into the record, or are we good?
Chris Peterson, yes. It's Chris,
Where do I start?
Have to get read into the record?
new guy,
The correct answer here is yes.
both of them, one with each name in it.
Chris Kelly?
I heard Chris Peterson make the motion.
No. There's no motions coming from down here.
So we're gonna do two resolutions, one with each name? Because that's, which,
Read one and say and/or John Kimball and
yes, because there's two in our packet.
identical, I see.
Yep, they are.
They have
Are separate, it says,
different dates.
that's the issue, right?
Yes, yes.
So let's just do the one tonight, and then you don't have to come back, but we can do the other one as soon as Maria takes office, right? Just to keep it legal, but I mean, there's no need for you to come back and sit here in the audience again for it. That
Our
make it
town
easier?
council is here, maybe,
Okay. There you go.
Okay.
thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Which one?
Well, there are two different dates. but the
Which
dates are
one do you
different
want me to
on
read? Board, please clarify.
She signed this on Monday. Why would you just do it? She signed this on Monday.
What are you gonna do then? I'm gonna transfer it.
I would just read the second one. I think this would be
Yeah.
simple.
So I'm not reading the Kimball, I am reading the
the
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle.
I'm handling this right to the next.
Yeah.
Official town manager.
Hold on.
You're gonna see a lot of that over there.
Yeah.
Are we sure? Okay, thank you, Bob D. Authorizing resolution of the town of Simsbury certification. I, Erica Butler, the town clerk of Board of Selectmen, do hereby certify that the following is true and correct copy of the resolution adopted by the Board of Selectmen at its duly called and held meeting on January 22nd, 2017. You've already got it wrong. Do I keep going, or do I need a corrected
Let's
copy?
say 18.
You're good.
2018, in which a quorum was present and acting throughout, and that the resolution has not been modified, rescinded, or revoked, and is present in full force and effect. Resolved that the Board of Selectmen may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate, and further resolved that Maria Capriola, as Town Manager of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and to do and perform all acts and things which she deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents, including but not limited to executing and delivering all agreements and documents contemplated by such documents. Vanderstein further certifies that Maria Capriola now holds the office of Town Manager and that she has held that office since January 29th, 2018.
Okay.
In witness thereof, the undersigned has executed this certificate this 22nd day of 2018.
No.
January.
You don't want to put the date there, do you? It's not executed, though.
No, what I think you should do is approve the resolution tonight and authorize her to sign after she's sworn in. It's an incumbency certificate. The purpose of this is so that
when you get this grant, the person signing the grant on behalf of the town is the incumbent at the time she signs it. So the wording has to be, you're authorizing her to sign it once she takes the office.
So we need to
Okay,
change
so
the motion.
can we
I think
put
we
the
need an
motion?
amendment to the motion
Yeah.
to say that, you know, we move that we authorize Maria Capriola to execute the resolution on behalf of the town of Simsbury on January 29th, 2018, when she takes office.
Second that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm glad that we got there.
Thank you for steamrolling me onto that.
No problem.
Completely incorrect.
Welcome to the Board of Selectmen.
What is this Irish?
We're gonna get Eric soon, don't worry.
Give me some Greek. I don't know what that means, but he says Irish. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Chris.
We've all been there. My first one was like 3 pages, so.
Hey, I don't mind reading them, as long as I make them right. I can't read them.
Absolutely. All right, and item F is the Simsbury Housing Authorities requesting that this board waive a building permit fee of a little over $1,000, $1,036 to be precise, for the replacement of the generator at the Virginia Connolly residence. Ed, is there anything you want to add to this?
There's two.
Oh, yeah.
Approximately $660.
That was, we just got that today.
Yeah, that was-
There it is.
That was $660? Okay.
616.
16, okay.
And this is all part of the ongoing construction under the Small Cities Grant that the Housing Authority is administering.
We did on the generator, we happened to be, when we opened the bids, the lowest bid was approximately $12,000 more than what was budgeted for the generator. The underground storage tank came a little under what was budgeted. However, we have yet to take it out of the ground, and there's could be a potential for additional monies in order to do that once it's removed. So by virtue of saving the building, fees would also help us in case we do need the additional money to make any changes to the projects, or in fact, if there's money left over at the end of the 4 projects, then we can utilize it to do some other infrastructure improvements at the housing authority.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion to waive the permit fee of $1,036 for the Simsbury Housing Authority for the replacement of the generator and the $616 fee for the underground tank?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, sir.
Lastly, item G is the approval of the 2018 budget workshop schedule. So it is budget season.
Yeah.
You'll see in your packet that we've got 2 dates. The first is basically an all-day workshop on Saturday, March 10th, and then additional time if needed in the evening of March 15th, which is a Thursday. Any discussion on those dates?
As long as it's not the 17th.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the budget workshop schedule as outlined in the submission?
So moved.
So moved.
Your second, Chris?
Second, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Moving on to other business, I'll ask our attorney to.
You want to talk about the 350?
Yeah, we'll do that second.
Okay, that's fine.
So this is basically following up on a conversation that we had on January 8th at our previous meeting regarding historic tobacco structures at 45 Hoskins.
Yes, and at that time, you requested that I contact Tim Lescalede on behalf of Griffin Development and ask if they would be willing to delay the demolition of that structure and not seek a permit for 6 months or some longer period to allow the town to obtain a grant and do the study that has been described to you by the members of the Historic District Commission and the State Office of Historic Preservation. And we had a good discussion about it, and he wanted to know more about the purpose of the grant and how that would affect all the properties. And after explaining that to the best of my ability, he went and discussed it with his superiors, and he called me back today. And I told him I had to report to you tonight, but he was kind enough to call me back today. And basically said that they were not interested in delaying the demolition of that structure. They've done their own study. They have determined there is no historic significance to that structure. It has nothing, in their view, has nothing to do with Martin Luther King or anybody else of notoriety. And then reiterated that the property is very much for sale. They have no interest in developing it. They have a lot of interest in selling it. And they would take in his words, a paraphrase, take into account the cost avoidance of the demolition in whatever sale price that they would be looking for the property. It's about 8 acres. It would not justify development of a road for purposes of the subdivision, but there, according to him, there are some potential for some front lots. And I conveyed back to him that I felt that the tenor of your discussion last time, that the town was not interested in acquiring it without having public purpose to support it, essentially. And he's, he said that if between now and when they are eligible for pulling the permit, there was some substantive discussion about acquiring it by some entity or person, then, they would in good faith negotiate that without pulling the permit. And he also said that they have no objection to the town studying the property, and I said it would be difficult to study the property while it was being demolished. He acknowledged that would not be very effective. So the bottom line is they'll be looking to pull their demolition permit soon, unless there's an intervening event in the form of some good faith negotiation for the purchase of the property. My sense is that the selling price, they'd be flexible on the selling price in order to avoid what could be a very costly demolition, because, as you all know, you don't just go out there with a backhoe and pull stuff down anymore. You've got to do a lot of testing and remediation before you can do that. So that's where it stands. There's an openness to have further discussions, but the bottom line is they would not agree to a delay of demolition beyond that which is spelled out in the ordinance for purposes of doing a study, the scope of which is indeterminate at this point.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Bob?
Just to clarify, we're talking about the parcel that has the rooming house
Yes.
on it and the little house
Yes.
And a little barn, too.
that they already
a
sort of
barn.
started demolishing and then stopped. That's the one we're
Correct.
talking about? Because the backhoe's already out there and
Yeah, well, they initially weren't completely aware of the ordinance, and, some time ago, we educated them on
okay.
the fact of the ordinance, and,
I
they
just want to be clear for everybody at home what we're talking
quickly
about here.
understood that there was a lot more to it than driving the backhoe to the site.
Because it looks like they started,
Well, they're trying to secure the site because,
they're securing.
because there is some evidence of some trespass there.
Yes.
And there's some
Yeah.
evidence of some activity that could result in personal injury, and they're worried about that.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why they don't really want to delay, because they believe now that there is some group of people who is, not occupying the property, but, frequenting the property.
Okay. Yeah.
What's the, we talked about you floating, what was the cost they gave you? What was the expected buy?
All I can really go on is the assessment
Yeah.
value. I think the town has, I don't want to say what the town has it on in the card. I don't have it in front of me. But I could ask them.
And is that something that we would then float out potentially to whom, whatever may be those entities that in lieu of the town looking at purchasing it, then would want to?
So that's why I wanted to have this conversation tonight, because it's a ticking clock. I think the date I had is February 9th, but don't quote me on that. It's early to
Yeah, it's early
mid-February.
February, yeah.
So it sounds like if there were an entity that were serious about acquiring this property, that they'd be willing to entertain that discussion.
Yeah, and I think, according to him, there is some potential to develop a portion and retain the buildings on the other portion. He says it does abut town open space in the back. I guess it's a deep drop-off from the site. And if there was somebody out there that were some private individual or group that was interested in learning more about this, provided it was okay with you, I could sort of act as the intermediary and just get the two parties talking to each other.
So where we left it last time is that I think that there was sentiment by this board that we would not be in favor of using, taxpayer money to just acquire this property. But I think, given that it's in the plan of conservation and development as structures that are worth preserving, just speaking for myself, I would be in favor of the town playing a facilitating role if there was another entity that wanted to acquire this property to preserve those structures. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that?
Well, right now, our only hold over this transaction, so to speak, is our ability to issue a permit.
Correct.
I mean, we don't have any authority per se to stop him from selling it to somebody or
No,
anything.
there is a statute, 22A-16, the Private Attorney General Act, which allows any person to bring an action in Superior Court to preserve the air, water, and other natural resources of the state. The term other natural resources of the state does include historic properties. Question always becomes, old property is not necessarily historic property. It would be on the burden of the plaintiff in that case to show that this property rose to the level of a natural resource of the state. I don't have any input on whether or not that could or could not be done. However, there is that statute, and then you can get an injunction against the issuance of the demolition permit.
That's not necessarily the town's role.
No,
here,
any
so
person
that's,
can do, yeah, and, I'm not recommending
I'm
that you
just,
take
I
that
mean,
step.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Eric, but I'm just
Yeah.
not sure what intermediary would mean in this case, because we don't have any authority to
Yeah.
say yay or nay, or to negotiate with anybody. I mean, that would be, this is a private seller and a private buyer.
Yeah, selling to a.
That's not
another.
us, that's, so,
Oh, my only thought on that was if someone were to step forward through your office or town manager's office and say, hey, we'd like to
Yeah.
learn more about that, I could simply
That's all you're
call-
saying, Eric,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just that
that's all I'm-
people are calling you up and saying, hey, what's going on with the piece of
Right.
property? I want to learn more about it. And you could say,
I'd say, hey, Tim, I
Talk
heard
to-
from so-and-so, they
Right.
seem interested, could you follow this through?
so with that limitation, I would be fine with saying that. I mean, if the Simsbury Land Trust comes in and says, yeah, we want to do that, then we might be able to play a more significant role in that,
Yeah.
but aside from that,
Yeah.
I'd say we're pretty limited in our ability to do any negotiating here.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
I think I have a pretty good sense of direction on.
thank you.
That's,
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts regarding this? Okay, Bob, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. So our last discussion item is Simsbury's 350th celebration. Cheryl, would you mind giving us an update?
Speaking of historic preservation, I thought the library's presentation was interesting in that's the 350th anniversary of Simsbury's founding is going to involve nearly every entity in town in some way or another, and that includes the library. The 350th anniversary is in May of 2020, so while it may seem early to start planning for this, it is not. The 300th anniversary celebration was a series of 6 months of programs and projects and celebrations and parades and beard growing contests and pie eating and anything you could possibly think of. It's
Got some catching up, but I could take this on, I suppose.
so you might want to start now with the beard, but
Excuse me, let's play catch up.
I know, I got
With
you.
Chris and I.
That's right.
But anyway, so last week, I had the privilege of, I wasn't one of the panel, but I was there to observe. The Historical Society did a program on SETV, which I would encourage everybody to look at, just giving a little bit of the history of the celebration and why we do this and where we're going with this. I think we all recognize that it is probably not going to be of the same scale as it was 50 years ago. We probably don't have enough volunteers to tackle that. But that being said, we have kind of identified a sort of a framework that we'd like to, to start with, and that has to start with somebody to lead this effort. And everybody is looking to us now to get this ball rolling. Some of you will remember in our last term, Elaine and I did have a few meetings together to discuss how we might approach this. And the Historical Society and their program only put my name on the contact information. So right now, it just says to contact me, which is fine if you're interested in working on this. I thought that we might start with the volunteers that already have come forward, and there have been a few. And we need to sort of gather our resources and our thoughts and start a preliminary plan of action. So what I think this board needs to do is agree on point person or people, either make a subcommittee or something. I think, once we form the steering committee, I think 50 years ago there was 23 people on the steering committee. And that committee branched out into a variety of other committees. It would involve the schools. As I said, there's Parks and Rec, there's historical, there's a whole bunch of things. The parade was huge. I think after talking to the folks at the Historical Society, they thought perhaps the Memorial Day parade that year would be the 350th, since the anniversary is actually in May. So we could look to that. There are some towns who have applied for grants through the Historical Society, the State Historical Societies, to help fund this and organize, and we could look into doing that. We would have to assign that to, say, the Historical Society and say, here, we want you to apply for this. But again, that's going to take some direction from a central authority, and I think there's lots of people who are now looking to us to provide that guidance. So I open it up to all of you as to where you think we might go with this. Don't all volunteer once.
So first of all,
What are you asking us to do, though?
I think that this board, perhaps at a future meeting, could create whatever that central group is. I just wanted to say, Cheryl, thank you for, I think you volunteered to lead this from the Board of Selectmen perspective.
Clearly.
I really appreciate it.
That's what I heard.
That's
what I heard. But,
That's
and I know that unless Tom comes back with a determination around who hangs the banners across the Hot Meadow, I know that Sean is volunteered.
We won't be having banners. Nice, Chris.
If you could learn a little more about what the expectation might be.
Yeah.
And then we'll,
As I said, Elaine and I had actually kind of started this conversation. She was kind enough to give me the programs, actually, from the 300th, so I had a chance to go through that, just to look at the extent of what we're looking at, and it essentially went from May to October, and it was a lot. So I think we're going to have some serious conversation about what scope we expect to pursue here. And,
Yeah, I'd point out at the last meeting, there was a 325th anniversary as well, which was contained to a weekend, basically.
Yeah.
A much smaller event. I do think the first step is not just who might be on a steering committee, but what organizations we might want represented. I do think, a large 15, a large group with if people are looking for us to be the catalyst, to me the catalyst is we want this number of people, we want these organizations represented. Yeah. You assign people to this group.
Well, and Elaine and I actually did that step. We had made a list of the organizations that we felt should be approached first. Not that there couldn't be more, but it is a pretty big list. So we could start there. I thought perhaps, having, I want to call it a volunteer fair, but we're going to need either a website or something where people can go to and sign up and say, I want to run the beard growing contest, great, you're going to be the chairman of the beard growing contest, or whatever that is. And so there has to be some direction from the town as to how we bring that together.
I would also suggest, that I don't think we want to lay an expectation on any member of this board to be the chairperson
No.
of this.
No.
Independent of
Just-
someone wanting to. I think
No.
we're the catalyst of creating
Exactly.
the entity, and
Yeah.
obviously a key part of this is going to have to be to
Yeah.
recruit someone who really
That's what
has
I
a
would
passion.
anticipate,
This-
that
Right.
out of
Yeah.
this steering committee, we're going to get a chairperson or chair people, and they are going to, drive the car here.
Yeah, I think that, the strongest asset needs to be outside of this board.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Obviously, because
That
we're gonna
was
have,
certainly
we're gonna
my
have
intention.
participant change on this board.
Yep.
Possibly.
Absolutely.
And for continuity and fairness to all the people who put effort into it on the outside, we'd want that person to
That
be.
is exactly our
you know.
intention, so.
I
But
don't
as
intend
said,
to
this
lose any of you
was-
people from this board, but.
Well, really, this was just because we have to start somewhere. And it is a big process, so,
So at some point in a future meeting, there'll be a recommendation to get that steering committee started with those
Yes.
groups, and then we can send them forth to go plan.
I just wanted, in the interest of transparency, for
Yeah.
you all to know that,
These conversations are taking place.
that it is
Good.
taking place, and that now there will be a program on SCTV that is gonna run my town email address as a contact. So,
Perfect.
that's what it's gonna say, and I'm happy to pass all that information along to you.
Okay,
That's where we are.
great.
Maybe we can have the town, while we're doing this, look at the possibility of whether it's part of a website within the town's entity. I mean, to me, I absolutely agree that we should not be running things.
Oh, yeah,
We can
yeah.
facilitate it and try to get things going, but
Just get it going.
Yeah, facilitate.
we should be doing our job here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, sir, I'll wait for your lead as far as when you would be ready to come back with a recommendation on, with more specifics on what that entity would look like that we would create.
So, I have the blessing of this board to continue discussion, say, with the Historical Society, to perhaps assist me in making the list of, people that might be necessary on the steering committee.
That'd be great.
And then we are
fine with
gonna
me.
have to solicit, invite people to be on this and find out whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that,
You're in charge until you replace yourself.
exactly.
Again, thank you very much, Cheryl. Okay, we are going to move on to appointments and resignations, and we have a long list today of appointments. And before, I wanted to say this, I think, before we did all of these motions, because there could be some tuning out. I wanted to just say a major thank you to all of the people that we're about to appoint to serve our town on various boards and commissions. There are a ton of opportunities for, I think one of the things that I think makes our town really special is the level of civic participation, and this is a really good example of this tonight. So just wanted to thank everybody who we're about to appoint. So I will go through these basically commission by
You got the updated one?
commission. This came from, I printed it out tonight, so I think I should be good.
Okay.
Yeah, this wasn't the submission from Thursday.
Should say additions and corrections on the top.
Yes, I got that.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a motion to reappoint Donald Kippets and Robert Moran as hearing officers with an expiration date of December 2nd of 2019?
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Aging and Disability Commission, is there a motion to appoint or reappoint Victor Bible III, Lorraine Doonan, Arlene Zeppili as alternate members of Aging and Disability with expiration date of January 1, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to appoint Cheryl Lawben as an alternate member of Aging Disability Commission with an expiration date of January 1 of 2020?
So moved.
Sean second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to appoint Susan Krinsky as regular member of Aging and Disability Commission with an expiration date of January 1st of 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to appoint Catherine Robbins as regular member of Aging and Disability Commission with an expiration date of January 1 of 2020.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to Moving on to Building Code Board of Appeals, is there a motion to reappoint Richard Cortez and Samuel Ziplo as alternate members of the Building Code of Appeals with an expiration date of January 1 of 2020?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Clean Energy Task Force, is there a motion to appoint or reappoint Robert Weinstein, Regina Pinn, Mark Scully, Susan Van Cleef, and Timothy Walzak as regular members of the Clean Energy Task Force with an expiration date of December 2nd of 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Sharon Lawson, Judy Sturgis, Nancy Sheets as regular members of...
Could I interrupt you for a
Yeah,
second?
what did I do?
With my apologies. Could I ask you to not do the community chair appointments because we are having some confusion over the exact definition of the committee and whether we need to do that.
Okay, yeah.
We have to do some historical research into how this committee was formed and whether that is the appropriate way to put members on this committee.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
If there's no objection to that,
With my
we'll-
apologies.
So move to table community for care.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there a motion to, just take a quick look at these, reappoint James Morrison and Marjorie Winters as regular members of Conservation Commission, Inland Wetlands Agency, with an expiration date of January 1 of 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to appoint Chad Thompson as regular member of that committee with an expiration date of January 1 of 2020?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to appoint Jill Powatalis?
Politis.
That,
I think so.
just as Chris said, as a regular member of the Conservation Commission with an expiration date of January 1, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Is there, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Charles Haldeman as an alternate member of that same commission with an expiration date of January 1, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint David Bush, Lori Coppinger, Sarah Kramer, Kelly Kearney, William Mullen, and Gerard Wetjen as regular members of the Culture Parks and Rec Commission with an expiration date of January 1, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Cornelia Mason, Helen Peterson, and David Richmond as regular members of the Fair Rent Commission with an expiration date of November 30th, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Marguerite Carnell as a regular member of the Historic District Commission with a term expiring January 1, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to appoint Heather Getz, got that right, as a regular member of the Historic District Commission with a term expiring January 1 of 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And appoint Peter Adamowitz as an alternate member of the Historic District Commission with an expiration date of January 1, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Tom Gilmore, Paul Mickelson, and Edward Sparkowski as regular members of the Insurance Committee with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to Open Space Committee, is there a motion to reappoint Helen Peterson as a member at large of the Open Space Committee with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019?
So moved for my mom.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And is there a motion to appoint Robert Hagney as a member at large of the Open Space Committee with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Richard Cortez, Richard Durr, Francis Kelly, and Richard Ostop as regular members of the Public Building Committee with a term expiring of January 1, 2022?
Come on, Chris.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Lori Fernand, Rosemary Fusco, Carol Miller, Mary Turner as regular members of the Recycling Committee with term expiring December 2nd of 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to appoint Andrea Penta as a regular member of the Recycling Committee with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tourism Committee, is there a motion to reappoint Dominique Avery, Joseph Buda, Patricia Carbone, Paulette Clark, Joyce Howard, Michael Long, Catherine Oakes, Diane Phillips, Charmaine Seavey, and Richard Wagner as regular members of the Tourism Committee with a term expiring December 2nd, 2019?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Lucian Dragulski, Thomas Hickey, Michael Park, and Jerry Sheehan as regular members of the Water Pollution Control Authority with an expiration date of January 1 of 2022?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to reappoint Michael Doyle, Harold Bender, Lawrence D. Uh-oh. Gotta help me with this one. D. Skiaka. Oh, these are tough. Jane, Mark Orenstein, Ramon Rosati, William Rusi, and Jeremy Wallman to the Technology Task Force with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to appoint Catherine Robbins as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there a motion to appoint Gavin Schwartz as an alternate member of the Zoning Commission with an expiration date of December 2nd, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and I'll remind everybody that we've put out a news and announcements looking for one additional person, member of the public at large, to serve on the Open Space Committee as well as on the Technology Task Force. So a great opportunity to get involved, and you can go to the town website to learn more about both of those opportunities. Okay, moving on now to the review of minutes from our January 8th meeting. Any changes anyone would propose? Okay, then those minutes stand as presented. Are there any liaison or subcommittee reports? Okay, then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
job, guys. Good guys.